Alright, hello everybody. Today I am going to be making a short little video of how to install Hydrophase speed control. This is going to be the GPS based version, not the paddle wheel, but I do have the water temperature sensor that we will run to the back of the boat, and we'll get into that later on. So here's a shot of the motor. This is on a 2000 model Malibu Sunsetter VLX, so it is a V-drive, and the first thing that we're going to have to do is remove the two knobs right there and right there on the air intake, on the spark arrestor here. Remove this hose, which you can see I've already loosened a bit, and remove this whole assembly. So let me get that done, and then I'll show you what we're looking at next. Alright, so now that I've got the appearance cover and the spark arrestor moved, we can see now right here where the throttle cable meets the throttle body. And I don't know what exactly this piece is called that attaches to the throttle body, but you may want to cover up the intake there, just so you don't drop any small pieces or any debris doesn't get in there. I'm probably going to leave mine open because this is going to be fairly quick for me to get installed, and then I'll show you the rest. But what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to remove the nut that's on the back here and take this whole assembly off first off. So I'm going to do that, and then we'll come back. But as you can see, let me see if I can get up in here. But this is the throttle body. This is the throttle control cable. As you can see, it runs right underneath. That's what that blue cable is right there. It runs down past the computer box, and as you can see right there, get a little bit more light over there, up underneath by the gas tank, and all the way to the throttle lever up at the front there. So anyways, let me get this little thing off, and then I'll go on to the next steps. Alright, as you can see, I've got a 7/16 wrench on the back side there on that nut, and a 5/16 wrench on the front side, and we're going to disconnect those, and I'll show you here in a minute what that looks like. Alright, so as you can see, we've removed the throttle cable right there, and the issue that I'm having is this is such a tight space that I cannot get the end off. So what I did is I came down here to the retainer that holds the cable housing, which is right under that wire harness right there. I'm not sure if I can move this out of the way for you guys to see. I can't. So basically it's right there though. You can see right under that wire, that little black holder. It has a little retainer on there. You just open it up, and then it comes down where the cover is for your computer down there. And as you can see, this throttle cable goes. It's zip tied to the main wire harness right there. So I'm going to cut that zip tie, and I'm going to make sure to save it and put it with the parts, so that way I put the zip tie back when I'm finished. But I'm going to get this throttle cable off. Hopefully I can kind of squeeze it out, because this fuel rail right here where it bolts up, well, sorry, this is one man show here. Right there, I can't get that up enough, so I'm going to slide it out back that way, and hopefully it'll come out and we can have a lot more room to work with. Alright, so now that I've got the throttle cable disconnected and I've got it rerouted just up here where I could kind of work on it a little bit easier and get that end off. The next thing that I'm going to do, and I'm doing this step a little bit backwards from what it said. It said to find a mounting place first and mount the Hydrophase somewhere, and then route all your cable, but I just figured it was easier to get all that out of the way so I knew exactly how much cable I had, because originally it was talking about putting this maybe on your exhaust riser, or at the end of your exhaust riser right there with those hose clamps. Well, the deal is, on my particular boat, that is so far back that the cable coming right here, it doesn't make a smooth bend. It's basically not long enough. So I was kind of looking around here, and I thought that on my boat, which again I've said it a couple times, is a 2000 Malibu Sunsetter VLX, so basically just a V-drive boat. I'm going to take this Hydrophase here, and I'm going to mount it right here to this beam upside down like so. And I'm going to secure it using 2 big zip ties. The zip ties that I'm going to be using are not included in the kit, but I may come back later with some big hose clamps just to secure it more tightly. It kind of just depends how much it vibrates, but that's going to sit there like that. My only concern really is this is where the hatch folds down. Both my hatches fold down and meet right here, so there is possibility of water kind of seeping down. But I did, you know, I know this motor is kind of water resistant, vibration resistant, all that good stuff, but it's just going to sit right there. And then as you can see, that cable bends nicely around and meets up with the other cable. So I'm going to mount that. I'm going to get the cable, my original one, rerouted underneath there, and we're going to put the hardware on for mounting it to the little throttle body arm there. So anyways, that's what we're looking at there. Hopefully you can see. Okay, originally I had that little ball off of the throttle arm there, and I decided I'm gonna go ahead and install it, because as I was reading the instructions, it says that in some cases you can leave this on. And prior to me taking this off, I was thinking, why do I need to take that off? Because it swivels, and it didn't make any sense to me. But I figured I was going to do it exactly by the book, because I figured they know best. But there was a little clause in there saying we could keep it on, so that's going to stay on for now. That's just a little edit. So we're not going to be using the L bracket. We're going to be using this, and also that little cylindrical deal that attaches to the ball. So I'll show you here in just a minute. I'm going to get the control cable all set up, and we'll show you what's next. Alright, so like I was saying, I've got the control cable right here from the control unit, and I've got the hardware attached. Also, I've got the little cylindrical piece there that attaches to the ball that's on the throttle arm there. So anyways, the next task is going to be to route this cable, which is the throttle cable, to the control cable, that's right here, right through this mess, and attach the bracket, which I'll show once it's installed, and then run it and attach it. So real quick, let me grab a light. I know I showed you earlier where the throttle cable release was, which is right there. I don't know if you can tell. Let me see if I can get this light. Like I said, one-man show here. Okay, there we go. That bracket right there with all the holes, that is the bracket, and you can't see. There you go. Now you can see it. That's where the throttle cable sits right there. And in that hole right there, right by my index finger, we are going to attach, hopefully, if that other screw is not in the way, the bracket for the control cable. So once this is all installed, I will show you what it looks like once it's assembled. Alright, now I've got this cable routed from the control module. As you can see, it goes right under there. You can see the bracket right there where that black cable is. Right there. And you can see the right underneath the it's so hard to freaking see, but basically right there is the guide for the throttle cable of the boat. So once I have that all installed, you can see the control cable just hanging out right there. It'll go to the ball. Next thing I've got to do, because I couldn't fit all of those cables underneath all of that at once, is feed the throttle cable, and then once it's all connected, I'll try to get a good picture of it. Otherwise, we'll just have to see it assembled. Alright, so now we're over here at the dash. This is what it originally looks like. And like I said, this is on a 2000 Malibu Sunsetter VLX. So what we're going to be doing on mine is I'm going to replace the speedometer. So I'll be taking that gauge out and replacing it. Currently the tachometer does not work, and so the hour meter is a little broken too. You can barely tell what it says. I don't have the boat on right now, so it doesn't say anything. And then of course your multi-gauge right here with the fuel level, oil pressure, temperature, and voltage that your alternator is putting out. So anyways, that's what it looks like originally, and I'll show you a little bit more once we get into it. Okay, so I've tilted the steering wheel down, and I've removed all of the bolts all around the enclosure, as you can see. You know what? Let me see what size hex that is. It is a very small hex, I can tell you that. It is a 5/64 bit. I don't know if you can see that. Probably not. Oh, there we go. 5/64. But that's how small it is. So if you have one of those, then you'll be able to take that out and just work on it. It's kind of hard, but it's starting to pry out of there just a little bit. So I'm going to work on it, and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm finished. Alright, so I've got the dash exposed, and you can see where the bolts go. But anyways, I don't know how much I'm going to be able to show you behind here, but here's the speedometer up top. You're going to unplug the plug there, and then you're going to unscrew the bracket there, and you're going to replace this with the Hydrophase. So it's not too cluttered up in there. If I could, I would go ahead and mount the control unit in there, but at the same time it'd be a little bit difficult to get to if you need to check things out. So anyways, that's what it looks like up behind there, and I'll show you when the new gauge is installed. Alright, so I've got the display out, and you can see the empty plug. It's just going to stay there empty behind there. And I've got the new unit right there. So what you're going to do on the back, you're going to take these two nuts off, and when you do that, this black retaining ring that I'm holding is going to come off. You're going to slide the gauge in place, so wires first, in place, and then from there you will go ahead and put the bracket on from the back with these screws. So I'll show you in just a second once it's installed. Alright, here it is. The gauge is installed. It's in place. We've got on the back here the black retainer and the nuts that go on there. And it's snug. Don't snug it up too tight or you may break the plastic bracket or something else, something worse. So just snug it up. And then you can see the gray cable I ran down the hole in the dash right there, and that's hanging out on the floorboard. I'll reroute that here later. But anyways, there's one last look inside of the dash. We're gonna button this thing up and screw back those screws in those holes right there, and I'll catch up back with you. Alright, so I'm about to run the temperature sensor, and as you can see right there, that's where the old speedometer tube went. I've got it taped off, but water still leaks through there, and that started happening last season. You can tell I need to clean my carpet up just a little bit back there, but that's where the wire is going to be fed through, and then we will use some marine sealant to seal it up once we are done, and that's probably going to be a little ways away from me. I'm going to go ahead and run the wire today, and then I'll make another short little clip. But anyways, there's that hole, and let me show you outside here. can see the tube running out into that pickup that my dogs have chewed off. So anyways, I'm gonna unscrew that and run the wire through and most likely mount the sensor right here. So stay tuned. Alright, so I've removed the little cover there, and you can see the old tube coming through. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tape the end of these wires here. I'm going to tape them to the end right there, and then I'm going to get in the boat and I'm just going to pull this right through, and it's going to fish it right through. If you don't have your tube, or you already took it out for some reason, you can always maybe stick a piece of wire down in there from the inside, or outside I guess, but the inside I think it'd be easier because of the carpet, or like a coat hanger that's really straight or something. So anyways, I'm gonna get that done, and then I'll show you what I'm thinking about doing is mounting it where this old pickup used to be. I'll have to get rid of all this crud, and the reason being, I can mount one hole and actually screw it on, as well as the sticky tape. So I know I still will have 2 more screw holes, and I'd probably just put the screws back in and just make sure they were sealed. One thing that you do have to keep in mind is there's the exhaust, and that's, you know, pouring out hot gases and warm water, so that will affect your temperature. Whereas if I was to run it and put it somewhere over there, it would be a little bit more. But I just want the minimal amount of wire hanging out right there, so I think that's just gonna be perfect. And I'll just know that, you know, the exhaust affects that. But it's just, I just bought this feature. It's not really important. You jump in the water, you know how cold it is, right? So anyways, see you in a little bit. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and finish up showing you the temperature, water temperature sensor install. So here we have it. I went ahead, the old pedo pickup was right here, so I just used one of those existing screw holes to screw this on there. I also used some of the 3M4200 to attach this, and then also I used some 3M4200 up inside of this metal piece right here, and once I took it off, I filled the hole right there with the sealant as well, so we don't leak. So anyways, that runs to the inside of the boat, right basically behind that black plate, which I've already put back together. But I went ahead and ran the wiring up under here and down along the main wiring harness all the way to the front, up under there, and I just secured it in place with zip ties, so it runs all the way underneath where the radio is, with the wiring harness all the way under the dash. And then under the dash you can see my air temperature sensor sitting right there, and then you can see the Hydrophase computer right there with all the plugs going into it, and I'll show you that with the overview of the whole project here shortly. So that does it for the water temperature install. It was a fairly simple process for that, and that does it for that. We'll see you in the next little clip. Alright, so I've got the throttle cable and control cable all installed. All I have left to do is put the appearance cover back over the throttle body and put the spark arrestor back on. So let me show you what's going on down here. So as you can see, the black cable right there, that is the control cable. That's the one that runs right here and goes around and comes to the Hydrophase control unit, which I have mounted right here on this beam, right where the hatch closes, because the cable is not long enough to be clamped to the exhaust riser right there. So what I did was I took the factory swivel right there. It uses like a little ball and swivel that I showed you earlier, and I put that on the control cable end. And then it's going to be hard to see. Okay, very hard to see. But basically right there is the linkage. and there's a little plate. I know you can't see it, but that's the actual throttle cable to the boat, and that's just secured by that little linkage that you can barely see in there. Sorry, it is very tight quarters on this boat to work. It was very hard to get all of those tight once everything was assembled. It took quite some time, but now everything's assembled, and like I said, I used zip ties to put the control unit there, and everything seems to be working properly so far. So the next thing to do is put the temperature sensor in, and we'll be good to go. Alright, so I'm going to show you how I installed the GPS, and I've already disassembled most everything. So at the top here, there's the air intake, and what I did is I'm running the GPS through there, so that way it can be on the outside of my window, just right there, right by the air intake. So what I had to do to modify that is I took off that cover. There's just 2 screws holding it on, and then on the underneath side you can see where I drilled a hole. I think it's probably like a 3/8 inch hole. I'm not really sure, but just drill a hole right there in the plastic, and then you can fish your wire through that. And you can either put a hole in the vent if you need to, or you can just run it out the top. I accidentally put a hole in my vent when I was drilling. I was trying to be very careful, but it still didn't work out too well. But it's okay, it's not gonna rip. But you can see the cords coming down, and I'm thinking about installing the computer up under here, right along there somewhere, so that way I can tie up all the wires and everything nice and neat up underneath there. But we'll see what's going on. But yeah, that's what I did with the GPS. Alright, I'm going to show you how I ran the power cable to the control motor, which this is the gray power cable right here. And I don't have it all secured. I will secure it along its route with some zip ties later. But anyways, we've got it connected right here at the back. As you can see, it starts. And you don't want to run this wire along any ignition wires. On this boat, the ignition wires are running from underneath the dash all the way along the back here. So the deal is you cannot route your cable along the side. What you're going to do instead is you're going to come with your cable, and you can see down here I have the coiled up version. I already fished this through, but the throttle cable actually goes up underneath from the throttle lever right here. It goes up underneath this way and down the center of the boat. So what I did is I went ahead and followed that cable run. So up under here there is a hole, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see the hole there, but there's the hole. It goes down into the bottom of the hole, which is right there, and then I ran that cable through the little guides and back through that hole. Now that hole right there, that starts the gas tank, and the thing is, you're going to want to use a I just used 2 long coat hangers. Let me see if I can show you. So that's 1 coat hanger right there, and another coat hanger, and I just basically twisted them together in the middle because 1 coat hanger wasn't long enough, and I fished it right through the bottom there, and it came all the way out right there at my gas tank. And so that's where that line is. I don't know if you can see it down in there, but that gray line is the power cable. So that's how I did that installation there, and that way it's not around any ignition wires, and you're all safe and good to go. Alright, so we're under the dash, and I wish I had a wider angle camera, but let me show you what my idea is. So I'm going to be mounting the computer box to the steering rack, because this is a solid metal tube. I'm going to use zip ties, and I'll show you that later, but right now I'm just trying to run all my cables down here. But anyways, I believe I'm going to put it on this side here. You can see there's the steering wheel, and anyways, right above, right in the center, is a wire loom here, and it has a gray wire in it. That should be the tachometer wire. So I used a Scotch lock that was provided with the kit, and I Scotch locked the gray wire that's in your kit there. Now this is my speedometer, or I guess control unit, that's mounted in the dash. That's that wire, and here's the wire for the tachometer. And it's gonna fall down on us. But anyways, I'm gonna tuck all this wiring up nice and neat, and then I'll mount the computer and get everything plugged in. I'll show you what I plan on doing is putting the temperature sensor and hanging it from this vent right here. I'll just kind of cool it around, and it should plug in nicely right here where I'm going to have the computer box. Anyways, that's it for now. Alright, I've just got the power wire hooked up, and as you can see here, the orange wire is a constant 12 volts, so I've got the red wire hooked up, and I just used the ring terminal that was provided. And then this purple and white wire here at the bottom is 12 volts switched, so I have the white wire. And then for the ground and the lights, I put to some of the gauge switches that have lights, I guess. This blue wire is lights on mine, so I have a Scotch lock. As you can see, I messed up the first time and accidentally put the Scotch lock, and this green wire did not lock into it. But I think I'm going to damage more trying to get this off, so I just left that and put a different Scotch lock, because there's two blue wires coming through here, so don't be confused. But this is the green wire for the lights, and then you can see the black wire here is a ground, and I have the black wire connected to it with another Scotch lock. So anyways, that's the power cable routing. So I almost have everything hooked up. Last thing is the air temperature sensor. Like I mentioned before, I'm probably going to just kind of coil it around this hose here right above me and just leave it dangling a little bit further back up in here. And that's it. I will be finished. So I'll show you the finished project here shortly. Alright, here comes the moment of truth. I've got the Hydrophase fully hooked up, and I just connected the battery. So I'm going to go ahead and cycle the key on, and we'll see if this thing turns on. Let's check it out. Yep, I heard the Hydrophase back there, and I don't think you can... There we go. That's what the screen looks like. So that's pretty awesome. Temperature sensors seem accurate. One's under the dash, and one's back there. So this is the first time that it's turned on. And that's pretty much it. I'm gonna go do the test, and looks like we'll be good to go. Alright, so I'm gonna go ahead and do an overview of the install of the Hydrophase Ridesteady GPS-based speed control. Right now we're looking at the control motor for the throttle cable, and I decided on my boat to install it right here because that was the best place possible. If I wanted to mount it to the exhaust riser right there, the cable running off of this, it was not long enough. So anyways, we've got that mounted up here. I've secured it with zip ties for now. I think what I'm going to do once I get to the parts store is actually get some stainless steel hose clamps and put hose clamps in place of these zip ties, but this is just going to secure it for now. And also I'm going to check, but as you can see, my hatch closes right here, and so I'm afraid, since this is the sun deck right here, and when I get out of the water from wakeboarding or whatever, it drips right here in this crease. I'm not sure if the water will drip on this motor or not. It does not need to, so what I may have to do is put like a little splash guard right there, and I may use just like a piece of plexiglass and cut it so that way I can use the hose clamps to clamp it in place and just kind of shield it from any water that would run off. So anyways, we've got that. You can follow the control cable over here, and it's very hard to see. In fact, you're not going to see it because of the appearance cover, but you can see it in the other video where I have all of the cable ran and where it's secured there. There's a couple modifications that I did. Let me grab a light so we can see here. In one of the videos, I show that the man, I'm not going to be able to show you really. Hold on just a moment. Okay, there we go. Okay, you can barely see, but right there is where the throttle cable attaches, the actual OEM throttle cable. And you can see the bracket that it mounts to. I had to slide that back just a little bit, actually, for everything to work for me. But it was just 2 screws, and you can tell, oh man, this is so hard. Oh well. You're just gonna have to move that back a little bit, and you can see right there where I have the little cable guide right there, so this throttle cable moves smoothly back and forth. That's one thing. You want to make sure when you do the install that when you move your throttle, this cable has plenty of room to move back and forth, okay? Because this cable does move. It's not just the cable inside of it. So that is basically that part. That's phase 1. We had to run the power cable for the motor, and you can see it connected up back here, right there. Anyways, I ran that cable all the way down, and you can see where I've secured it in place with a couple of cable ties, right down along there, and I just followed the throttle cable from the boat, and I fished it through all the way up underneath the floor, up underneath inside of the ski locker there. I don't know if you can really see right there the gray wire. It's pretty dark in there, but you can see where it comes up. It comes up underneath the floor right here at the driver's floor and comes up over, and then I have it attached to the control box there. So that's how I installed the motor. The next thing after I did the motor is I went ahead and ran the water temperature sensor, and back here you can see in detail more of my instructions on how I did that. But basically I have that stuck where the old pedo pickup used to be. I ran the cable through the hole where the existing speedometer tube was. I siliconed that up, and I ran that basically just around all the way on the main harness right here on the side, up and underneath the dash where it plugs in. So that's the water temperature sensor. The next thing I want to show you is how I did the GPS here. Now this needs to be in an area where it's going to basically be seen from the sky. You don't want it under anything, and in the instruction it says don't put it under metallic window tint. My boat windows are tinted. I just don't know if it's metallic or not. I didn't want to take any chances, and I think this is a much cleaner install. So as you can see, there's the GPS receiver right here. The cable goes through the intake vent right here at the front of the windshield, and I had to take this little cover off. So when you take that cover off, and you can see in some of my other videos, there's the vent hose that goes down there. Now what I had to do under here is cut a hole, or actually drill a hole right there in the vent tube bracket, and that's where I have my wire ran. So that's how that is, and it just runs across the steering column. I've used zip ties to secure all the cable, and then it plugs into the control unit right there. So let's get under here. I'll show you a little bit what's going on up underneath. All right, so on this boat, I wanted to put the control unit right there on the side, but with the carpet, it was just too hard to drill into there. And I thought, hey, why not attach it to the steering rack? So you can see, maybe you can see, this is pretty blurry. There we go. You can see where everything is plugged in here. Right here on the side, coming out from this way, is the I lost my train of thought. It's the throttle motor cable, power cable, and it needs to be separate by itself, so that's why it's ran over here. You've got the power cable, which I have the power cable routed, coiled up right there, and then all of the wiring goes through the ignition switches. You can see the white and red wires right there, and then up here you can see the green wire attached to the blue wire. That's the lights, and then the black wire with that other blue Scotch lock right there connected to a ground. So that all works. I've tested it out. I've basically just took all of my cables that I had left over and wrapped them up right here and used a zip tie to attach them to just a little hole right there on the main computer of the boat. So those are all nice and tidy right there, wound up. And then also you can see the other cables right there just wound up nice and tidy and zip tied down. So it's a pretty clean install up under here. You can see right there where I have my air temperature sensor just kind of coiled around the hose, hanging, because if I had it attached to something, it'd probably be picking up the temperature of that surface, and the top of that is black. So when the sun's shining on it, it'd probably show a good 110, 115 degrees when it's only probably like 95 outside. But anyways, there's that. That's what the install looks like up underneath the dash. Like I said, it's connected to the steering rack. You can see I just have it secured with zip ties there. I did have to drill 2 extra holes on the control module right there and right there, so that way I could fit a zip tie, but that was very easy to do. So I'm gonna go ahead, get up underneath the dash and show you what this looks like here. So, wow, this is blurry. Okay, here's the Hydrophase display. I went ahead and put it in place of where the old speedometer was. It was very easy to do. I just used some Allen keys to undo these bolts here, or screws rather. This whole dash piece kind of comes forward, and you can see in some of my other videos what that looks like. So anyways, I've got everything hooked up. Let's see if you can see this turn on there. There we go. So you've got power, and it'll show just a minute basically how many satellites come on, and it may take a whole minute just because I am under my carport here. And yeah, but basically that's the install. That's the overview. I know this is about 10 minutes or so of overview, and that beeping is very annoying, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. And you can see once I turn it off, it puts it in standby mode. What's odd, there we go. I was about to say what's odd is the time is supposed to be shown there, but the time is GPS based, and so as you can see, that 5, that means there's 5 satellites right there, and then the signal strength of those satellites. So we've got 8 satellites now. It shows the time. You've got your standby time. Basically I have 29 minutes until it's going to power off, and so this feature is useful whenever you're picking up the rider and you don't want to lose all the satellites. You saw how long it's taking to gather these satellites. The more satellites, the more accurate your speed's going to be. So anyways, that's what we've got. If you want to turn this off, let's say you're getting on the ramp, you just hit the power button, turns it off just like that. So anyways, I can't wait to get out on the water and use this thing. But that's the overview of the Hydrophase Ridesteady. I hope you guys enjoyed it. See you later. Alright, so this is the first time out on the water. As you can see, the Hydrophase is working, going 4.6 miles per hour at 690 RPMs. Check it out. I'm so happy it works. The plus means we have more than 10 or more than 9 or 10 satellites. But this is going to be great.